Fabulous. Anyway, right, thank you. For those of you that haven't met me before or weren't here for the opening 5-minute thingy, I am Tony Harmer, a specialist solutions consultant at Adobe UK, and I'm here to talk about UI, UX, and more importantly, Adobe XD. So I am really I'm not even going to bother going into Photoshop for part of this, because I'm going to stick with Illustrator just to start off with. Because people build things in all sorts of different tools. People use Sketch, people use Keynote, people use Photoshop, people use Illustrator, all sorts of things. And very few, if any, of those things were actually ever built for UI or UX work. They were built to do entirely other things. Photoshop, of course, was built almost 30 years ago, yeah, and the intention of modifying, adapting, and improving imagery, and then became a platform and a way for people to make imagery. So it went from adjusting imagery to creating it, and then, as you probably know, has broadened out into all different sorts of areas. One of which, as the term came into use and as the demand for it came into use, became UX, but never designed to do that work. Illustrator, 31 years old, similar story really, designed for you to create illustrations, the clue being in the name, of course, and has developed to do lots and lots of other things. People use it in UI work and people use it to create UX in here, but never designed to do that thing. People use it, however, it is a valid component of a UX workflow because it's very, very sophisticated and can achieve, with vectors, some really, really amazing effects. Once you've got something, some people work in Illustrator and then move it across into Photoshop and then add finesse to it in Photoshop. Largely unnecessary, by the way, in an awful lot of cases if you're not actually using raster imagery. But that kind of defeats the object, because if what we're aiming at is that whole multi-screen environment where we need things that can adapt to those environments, and of course vectors are the perfect thing for that. The minute you move them into Photoshop, you lose all of that stuff, and then you're into a renditions-based workflow where you've got to do things. And typically, of course, people have to do those things anyway, because that's what clients dictate. So Illustrator does have a couple of features, just before I move into XD, Illustrator does have a couple of features that can help you out that I'd like to point out. You're okay, it's cool, come on in. That I'd like to point out to you, show you, because you may well have missed them. Yeah? One thing in particular, actually, is that if I don't get to show you anything else, this will be the one thing I will show you. So I'm using one of the sticker sheets from Google Material here, which if you're working in UX already, you'll be very, very familiar with this. The fact that they make a sticker sheet for Illustrator shows that even Google use it, and actually I know they do use it. So, well, certainly the people I met at awards from Google, they use it anyway. But so here's the thing that you've probably missed, and it's one simple panel, and it's this, Asset Export. Have you come across this panel? Can you show me your hands if you have? Yeah, that's not too bad actually. Yeah, that's you know, more than half a dozen, which is really, really good, because in a lot of places I go to, they don't know that this exists, and their typical workflow when they want to export an asset is to isolate it out onto its own artboard, potentially, and then invoke Save for Web, which we've called now a legacy feature. Not entirely super happy with that. It's going to do the whole artboard. That's why it's taking just a moment there. It didn't matter about the selection. In fact, I can stop that going from there. But they do that, they export that out, and then they create other artboards for all of the other things and rinse and repeat that workflow. Not very flexible, not very dynamic. Photoshop has a similar mechanism, and Photoshop also has something called the generator, which when you enable the generator can export layers and groups of layers dynamically as you work on them. So you don't have to give it any further instructions. Once you've built out the layers you're going to be working on, you simply enable the generator, and the generator takes care of everything else, and it just keeps on generating the assets. If you've got a layer, for example, that is red and has an inner glow, and you take away the inner glow, it instantly re-renders the graphics that you're using from that. Works very, very quickly. And asset export works in a similar way. You can get asset export to work, if I just bring it out into the sort of center of your field of vision, you can get it to work with entire artboards, yeah, or you can bring it in at an asset level. And coming along shortly, there's going to be the powers of this particular panel are going to be extended. You can see that I just dragged in that artwork there. So just this button with this effect. So part of material is that nothing intersects, everything is on layers, as if you'd actually built it out of paper. So when you've got things that are active, for example, you change the amount of glow under them, which brings them towards you in the Z-index. If you've not looked into it, material is a lovely, lovely concept and thoroughly, thoroughly thought out. But I've dragged that into there, and of course, the only thing I'd have to do here would be to name this. So I'm just going to call that one plus just for now. And then I'll bring in this asset here, and I'll just bring in a few different things there like so. And you can see that underneath here, right, I've got the different ways that I can render this out. So I can save it as any one of these preset formats, and you can change that. Obviously, the number next to the JPEG is the quality setting that you can use along with that. But you can see SVG and PDF, because of course iOS 11 has a predilection towards PDF. So if you're putting stuff out, that's the preferred format for it. Pretty much the same way as the Apple operating system works. That works with a series of PDFs. InDesign, same thing. InDesign's made up of about 2,700 27,000 different PDFs in there that actually bring that interface together. So it's good architecture for doing that. So I can set that up, and I can add scale rendition. So of course I'd go for SVG first, and then perhaps I'd add a 1x scale and whatever down there in the different rasterized formats. That's a bit long-winded if all you want to do is output for one operating system. So I could click here for iOS, and you can see it does everything for me. It does me a 1, 2, and 3 times scaling for Retina, and it also gives me an SVG there as well, and there's nothing to stop me adding on the PDF for iOS 11. Android, because you've got about 5 different scalings there, because it works on a different system of SP instead of DIP and DP in there. There's a whole article on that you can find. Just search the term, what is SP unit, and you'll find all of that decoded for you. And from there, you just hit export. Now, up to that point, that is no different to save for web, apart from I can do 3 things at once there. But here's where this is important. If I decide I'm going to make a change here, right, I can simply activate that particular piece of content, right, and go in here and change it. So if I just isolate this one just for a minute, so drill down into that, and what I'm going to do here is change the color of this content. So I've got the color swatches from material here as well. A little bit unclear as to why that's not changing visually. Interesting. In that case, I'll just draw another thing on here. Oh, I know why now, because the layer's locked itself. So let me just add a new layer, and I'll draw a piece of content on there, and I'll add that to the panel as well. Okay, so I'll swap out and do that like that. Okay, so that's in there. If that now changes its color, you can see that it updates automatically in there, and that's the thing I'm trying to get across to you. Yeah, that save for web workflow is fine if you've got all day to do it. Yeah, but the thing is, you may well have all day to do it, but is that the best use of your time? Yeah, is sitting there just repeatedly invoking save for web profitable for you? I suspect probably not. Is it something that you find rewarding? Again, I suspect probably not. Yeah, so if you've not explored it already, do explore asset export here, because that way you're saving yourself a whole load of time, and when the changes come along, you don't need to fear them, because everything will update, and you just hit export again, and it updates the content that you've exported already, just overwrites it completely.